All right, today we're diving into something I think you'll find fascinating, the psychology of what we're calling the social media ghost. Those people who seem to be completely invisible online. We're going to figure out what their silence is really all about. Okay, let's just jump right in. You know exactly who I'm talking about, right? That friend, that colleague who just isn't there. No selfies, no vacation photos, no updates at all. In a world that pretty much runs on attention, their digital silence is, well, it's really loud. So the big question is, why? Why are some people totally invisible online? Now, the easy assumption, the one we all kind of jump to, is that they must be shy, maybe a little antisocial, or hey, maybe their life is just boring and they have nothing to share. But the psychological reality we're going to explore today, it paints a completely different picture. We're talking about people who are grounded, self-aware, and who are actively protecting their own mental space. It points to a deep inner security. So let's get into it. Let's really dive into the mind of our subject, the social media ghost. We're going to decode what that silence is really about. And this right here is the most crucial point to get right away. In a culture that literally rewards being seen, with likes, with shares, with follows, their quietness isn't some kind of accident or a flaw. Psychology tells us this behavior isn't random at all. It is a deliberate choice. So, okay, what's behind that choice then? Well, it all starts with a conscious trade-off. It's about choosing privacy over popularity. This is a really important distinction to make. This kind of behavior, it isn't about avoiding people or being antisocial, not at all. It's actually an act of self-preservation. It's a conscious decision to build a kind of fortress around their mental and emotional space, protecting it from all the constant noise and pressure of being online 24/7. Psychologists actually have a term for this. It's called a high privacy orientation. It's basically a strong desire to be the editor of your own story, to have control over the personal information you share, and to manage what other people get to see and think about you. And that's because people with this orientation, they're often very aware of what some have called the digital illusion. That endless feed of perfect curated highlight reels that almost never reflects reality. They see the performance for what it is, and they make a very conscious choice: peace over performance. And that choice is a direct defense against a really powerful psychological force known as social comparison theory. This is that deep, ingrained human tendency to figure out our own worth by constantly measuring ourselves against other people. So by just opting out of the whole sharing game, they are literally stepping away from a system that's designed to make you feel like you're always falling behind. So if they're not looking for validation from likes and comments, where do they get it from? Well, that brings us right to our next point, the self-validation mindset. This really gets to the heart of it all. While so many of us are out there looking for external confirmation, a like, a comment, a share, these individuals, they get their good feelings from within. Simply put, they don't need to announce their life to feel good about it. The experience itself is what matters. And yes, this trait has a name in psychology too. It's called an internal locus of evaluation. It just means your personal scorecard, it's kept inside. You judge your own successes and failures based on your own standards and your own values, not by the constantly changing opinions of the crowd. It's a quiet but incredibly powerful sign of inner security. This internal focus often shapes their real-world interactions too. They tend to be more introspective, They prefer deep, authentic conversation over the kind of superficial back and forth that really dominates so much of social media. They think before they speak, and they only post when something genuinely matters to them. So when you combine this high privacy orientation with that self-validation mindset, it all comes together in one really powerful trait, a unique and resilient kind of confidence, a confidence that just doesn't need an audience. So here's the bottom line. Their silence isn't a lack of confidence. It's a completely different kind of confidence. It's a secure self-esteem that is self-sustaining. It doesn't need external fuel like attention or approval to keep that fire burning bright. And in practice, people with this kind of emotional balance, they have a really strong sense of who they are. They tend to be less anxious, they aren't constantly looking for approval, and they're more focused on hitting their real-world goals because, frankly, they just don't feel the need to prove their worth to an online audience. So as we start to wrap this up, let's bring it all together. The next time you notice someone who never ever posts, just pause for a second before you make an assumption. They might just be more grounded and more self-aware than most of us. You see, the quietest people online may not need to be seen by the world. Because, and this is the absolute key takeaway, they don't need to be seen by everyone else in order to feel seen. Their sense of self-worth is already whole, it's complete, and it's validated from within. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Their quiet example really challenges us to reconsider our own relationship with validation and attention. And it forces us to ask ourselves a pretty fundamental question. In a world that rewards being loud, what does real confidence actually look like? Thanks for tuning in.